Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1438. Remy is impressive. Who pissed off the shaman? Someone shouted from the edge of the battlefield, which made all the shamans in the group look at each other for verification. This was definitely a shaman-type phenomenon, but it wasn't any of them. Then, they realized that Remy was the one doing it. Everyone was used to thinking of her as the alchemist, and they had completely forgotten that she had an actual class and other skills that didn't involve potions. The violent firestorm, combined with the meteors and the lightning, was enough that it put the rest of the crabs into a panic, and effectively herded them into the waiting claws of the dragons. Within minutes, the battle was effectively over, with only a final scan for hiding monsters left. You know, the farmers are not going to be happy about the firestorm, one of the dragons from the NAR palace noted as he surveyed the devastation. Remy shrugged. It will be fine. The crops were destroyed anyhow, and a bunch of mythic rank crabs did a fine job of running them all off before we got here. If they really get upset, I will just blame the crabs. The shadow dragon laughed. You're an interesting one, you know that? I am Prince Nathan of Gathuzan. Might I know your name? I am Remy, of the Darklight Host, Shaman Queen Extraordinaire, and the guild's leading runic alchemist. The dragon prince laughed. Well, I can certainly agree that you are no ordinary shaman. That spell is incredible. Remy bobbed her head happily. It's actually 3 different epic grade spells cast at the same time. You need to do them all or it's just not right. Normally, I would use a flood or a swamp with it, but crabs like the water. Noted. I will keep in mind that property damage and renovations are the same thing in your native language, he joked. Remy smiled at him and held out a potion. Would you like to test this for me? It's a brand new recipe. The prince stared at the violently purple concoction with increasing concern as it bubbled. What does it do? Not quite sure. It will either permanently increase the flow rate of your mana pathways or cause an uncontrolled libido increase for the next 30 days. The prince carefully stepped back. Then an evil glint in his eyes betrayed his desire to play along with Remy's plan. Jerry, get over here. The alchemist thinks that she's got a potion that can help with the damage to your mana pathways. He shouted. A shadow dragon mage came jogging over, looking exhausted from exertion. Carl could see that large parts of his body were scarred from a recent battle, and that was most likely the cause of his mana pathway damage. Give me a moment to check him first. It might be fundamental rule related. He warned Remy before she could hand over the potion. He could sense the power of mana manipulation and an immortal rank skill on the wounds, lingering within the dragon's body. Do you not have anyone who can nullify that damage? It should let you heal eventually if the scars are purged, he asked. None available at the moment. They're all focused on critical care cases. We took some casualties during the invasion. The mage replied with a shrug. There was nothing that he could do about his situation, but there was still hope for recovery, especially now that he had found Remy, who apparently had just the potion he needed. Carl used the amulet's power to increase a nullify to immortal rank, and focused his understanding of the rule of mana manipulation into the spell to undo the lingering damage to the dragon. The power in the scars faded, leaving only physical damage. Success. Alright, now you can try the potion. The damage to his mana pathways would not be healed by a regular healing spell, and Nullify only removed the lingering power that might have prevented the potion from working. Remy could test the potion without Nullify later, assuming that it actually worked and didn't just give the unfortunate volunteer a raging erection. His damaged mana pathways were rebuilding themselves, and even expanding beyond where Carl could see that they had been before the injury. The potion was an incredibly effective one, and for less powerful mages it would be enough to put them leagues ahead of their peers. However, the power level was still too high, and in a moment the overflow of power was going to cause him to require healing. Likely more healing than Remy's hastily erected healing totems were going to provide. Remy frantically scribbled notes with 3 of her 4 hands at once, trying to document every part of the process. Yes, it is definitely working. It might be a bit potent, but that is a dosage issue. Easy to fix. The other side effects appear to be minor. Overstimulation, which may cause a loss of consciousness. Minor drooling. It looks like my research was right. It does stimulate the libido at the same time as the mana flow. That's unfortunate. Keeping a broom around to smack sense into potion drinkers is just too much of a hassle. But the libido effect is not as pronounced as feared. With the dose reduced, it should be manageable. Just send them to a brothel after, and it will be fine. The prince looked scandalized, but Remy just shrugged. What? It's better than just telling them to take care of it themselves. Besides, the succubi actually buy potions just specifically for that effect. They sell them at the demon-run brothels. Prince Nathan began to laugh as his friend struggled to recover from the overdose of potion. It was beginning to fade, but so was his consciousness. He's going to be fine, right? Remy pulled the mage's eyelid open, then dumped a healing potion down his throat. Give him 5 minutes. His mana pathways are in great shape, and the scars are all gone. He'll be good as new once he wakes up. Chapter 1439 woke up on the floor. As the aftermath of the battle was cleared, more dragons came to see what was going on with the prince and the leader from the Darklight host. What happened? Did he get hit by something unusual? Nope. He's testing a new potion. It fixed the damage to his body and improved his mana flow. Do you want to try it? Remy asked. The dragons stared at the man on the ground for a few seconds. Thanks, but I'll pass. And that was why it was difficult to get volunteers in the mythic rank. They never took risks just for fun. Slowly, the dragon came back to the land of the living, and blinked slowly at the crowd examining him. Nobody thought to put me somewhere comfortable? Remy shrugged. It could mess with the data. Sometimes touching people under a potion effect causes the mana to leak. The mage seemed to accept that answer, and he carefully pulled mana in to refill his mana pool. I would say that it worked. It might even be an improvement over before I was injured. That really is an incredible potion. Remy smiled. Good thing too. It's a right pain to make. The ingredients aren't too difficult to get, but with all the runes and the brewing process, anything less than spectacular wouldn't be worth it. I think that a few drops for the lower ranks might be the best use. Just enough to get them advancing smoothly. A few drops? Then why did I drink the whole bottle? Remy shrugged, and the dragons laughed. He should have seen that one coming. Alchemists hated when a potion didn't work, so giving a heavy dose the first time was standard practice, as it let them see effects that would be minor at a normal dose. Well, none of us are youngsters anymore. If you want to test it on them, we should likely head into town. If we tell them that the majority of the threat is gone, we might even get some gratitude out of them. One of the shadow dragons suggested. You make it sound like they might not be happy to see us. Carl noted. You? They might be happy to see your group. But us? Shadow dragons from the royal family? Not nearly as likely. They're still a bit pissed off that we didn't manage to save all the towns in this region, you see. Ray patted him on the shoulder. I'm sure it will be fine. I am used to people panicking when they meet me for the first time, and I can smooth over little things like a small town full of dead people. The dragon blinked once, then frowned. Where did you even come from? I swear you were not here a second ago. Thank you. The dragon clearly didn't understand why she thought that was a compliment, but his mind was more focused on the aftermath of the battle than the pride of a spider. Carl felt the mana in the area shift slightly as someone arrived using a skill similar to Shadow Step, right behind the prince. Instinctively, he put a barrier on the dragon, while Ray moved to intercept their unannounced guest. For a split second, a black shape was there. Then, the new arrival clashed with Ray, and both of them flickered away, exchanging blows in a running battle. What in all the gods' names was that? Prince Nathan gasped as he touched his sleeve, where an incredibly sharp blade had cut right through his mythic ranked fur cloak. Assassination attempt is my guess. Carl decided. Kara nodded eagerly. This place was wonderful that way. There were always assassins, stupid people, and free entertainment. The dragons immediately moved to surround the prince, and Carl sighed. The attacker can shadow step. Give the prince room to move and fight. Trapping him like that just makes it easier. The prince activated a magical device, and 2 more barriers appeared over his body. That seemed to calm him a little, but he was still searching for something that was no longer there. Where did the spider go? He asked after a few seconds of futile searching. She's playing with the assassin. He must be good, or she would have caught him and brought him back by now. Remy clapped to get their attention. Don't worry about her. There aren't many hunters on the continent more skilled than a blood destruction demonic. Spider. The reality of the attack was beginning to set in, and Prince Nathan began to accept just how close he had come to dying on a random outing from the palace. It hadn't even been a close fight. The attacker had appeared, sliced through Carl's mythic ranked barrier and his cloak, and then vanished before he could even react. And he generally considered himself a capable combatant. Ray reappeared, covered in quickly healing cuts, and raging. He escaped. That bastard escaped. She informed Carl, nearly screaming in frustration. You will get him if he comes back. Good work rescuing the prince. Carl knew that was not the concern. Someone had managed to do that much damage to her, despite her wealth of skills, incorporeal fighting form, and limited invulnerability. Then they escaped justice. Dangerous didn't even begin to describe that situation. And they had their whole group out in the open. Did you manage to identify the threat? Carl asked gently through the mental link. Yeah. Shadow Dragon, immortal rank equipment, peak mythic power level. Well, that certainly wasn't random. Someone had gone to the very best of the best to kill the prince, and they had used one of their own. At least that meant that the other group members weren't likely to be a primary target. That didn't mean that they were actually safe, but it did mean that whoever wanted the prince dead was unlikely to come for them first. Well, perhaps Ray and Carl. But out of everyone, they were the most likely to be able to take care of themselves. If the enemy could assassinate the two of them, everyone else was pretty much screwed anyhow. Chapter 1440. That's not a thing. After nearly an hour on high alert, everyone began to relax, convinced that the attacker wouldn't be back so soon. Their attack had failed, and there was a chance that they had used an item with a longer cooldown, or a single-use artifact to ensure their success. If they had, it was even more impressive that Ray had rescued the prince. But the fact that it had been so close had the man rattled. What is your position in line to the throne? Carl asked, curious why this dragon was so popular. Prince Nathan shook his head. I'm from the third branch of the royal family, so I would be about 130th to the throne. More likely it is something related to my work. I am the warden of the NAR Royal Prison, and I sit on the Judicial Council. There aren't many prisoners there, as it's reserved for imprisoned nobles. But those who end up there are all powerful. So, it could be one of the noble families who has recently been in trouble. Opal summoned an avatar for herself, so she could interact properly. Oh, the plot thickens. Have there been a lot of nobles in trouble lately? Juicy scandals? Marriage arrangements that were secretly a trap by the families. The prince sighed. You know there have been. There always are. But why are we talking about palace drama now? Opal's avatar shrugged. It's better than letting you panic. Plus, I want to know. I am an illusionist, and I like to put on drama shows reenacting important moments in history. This just might count. Someone actually escaped from Lady Ray. That's not a thing that happens. You say that like she's an elite assassin of some sort. One of the dragons noted. She's a mythic rank blood destruction demonic spider, with the Night Haunter skill, limited invulnerability, and a full damage buff skill set. When she wants things dead, they should die. That's just how it works. Opal's representative, who looked much like Lyric the elf today, explained. Oh, a blessed of the spider goddess. Now I understand. The dragon agreed. A few seconds later, a portal opened, and a whole unit of palace guards rushed out. Highness, we got your message. The chief magistrate has assigned us to protect you. The team leader explained. Is there any other news of trouble? The prince asked. No, Highness. Only your report so far. It appears to be personal, not an attempt on the judiciary. At least it's not another nationwide incident. All right, I won't be returning to the palace for now. Instead, I will travel with this group. If the ones targeting me don't know where I have gone, there is a much smaller chance I will be attacked again. Carl noticed that Naksha's magic was reacting again, so someone was definitely going to try to kill that prince again. Possibly the same someone. There was no way Ray would let the prince leave now. Opal's avatar had an excited expression that was making all the guards nervous for a reason that they couldn't quite place. But her words were quite reasonable. You must have all the insider info, right? What are the best places for us to hunt mythic monsters? Overpopulated, excess from the invasion, they're all good, as long as they are totem rank or higher. She asked. Any other requirements? The prince asked curiously. He recognized the illusion for what it was, but he couldn't tell who was using it to interact. The illusion tapped her chin as Opal decided. If there is a chance for a dramatic rescue scene or some more than brotherly love. The guard snorted black mist in human form, accidentally activating his breath weapon as he tried not to laugh. Is there something wrong with the illusionary girl? The prince whispered to Dana. That is debatable. She's a huge fan of erotic dramas, though. Dana whispered back. They really did need to find a way for Opal to interact more with the outside world. But the issue was that she was a butterfly made of crystal. It really wasn't realistic to ask her to interact in any way except with illusions. In a fortified manor house in the city of Nakimb, a lone dragon lay in a pool of mythic healing potion, while a dozen servants and healers tried to staunch his bleeding. Lord, I don't know what to do. A young healer pleaded after another healing spell failed. Get me a white dragon. The Shadow Guardian must have mastered the rule of death. See how the flesh is rotting instead of regenerating. The bleeding is from a skill that was used, but that rotting can't be anything but a fundamental rule. We need someone stronger, and it has to be the temple elder, or another mythic white dragon. Now go. The older healer instructed. The young healer ran out of the room, while the assassin locked eyes with the healer. I don't know who warned him. Everything was perfect, but that spider moved so fast that I was bleeding before I even finished activating a precast skill. I wounded her, but I don't think I killed her. He whispered. Impossible. One scratch from that dagger should be a death sentence. The voice came from the corner of the room as a demon stepped from the shadows. I swear it is truth. I wounded her a dozen times, and she didn't even slow. I had to use the immortal relic to escape. She could have been in the group the prince went to assist, but what are the odds? Assassins like that don't just wander the wilderness. Who? The demon asked. Lady Ray Bloodbath of the Dark Light Host. The demon hummed to himself. Lady Ray, is it? Interesting. To think the spider goddess has another so close to immortality when she already has an immortal guardian in this world. It must be the doing of the Supreme Lady. She does love to use her guild to meddle in others' business. Why? The assassin asked. Because she can? Because you were strong enough to challenge her pet spider? Who knows? It's better not to think too hard on the motivations behind. Chaos Incarnate. Chapter 1441 Gathunbu. At the gates to Gathunbu, a small crowd had gathered once word that a group of mythic adventurers had come to clear out the remaining crabs from the farmland around the city. Adventurers, thank you for the assistance. What brings you to our home? The guard asked politely, before casting a suspicious glance at the shadow dragons. We are on a most epic road trip to hunt all the different leftover monsters from the Immortal Realm invasion. We're going all the way down the Western Islands, starting here, Carl announced. That got the attention of the crowd. Is it a quest? Some people got system quests to kill the monsters during the invasion. One of the bystanders asked. System quest? No, but that would have made it much more lucrative. We're actually just looking for new challenges and new culinary creations. We've got mystic cooking skill masters, and this is a great chance to get ingredients that don't normally exist in our world. Carl joked. Oh, perhaps you would like some more companions? I'm currently between jobs. A chubby teenage warrior asked. Ray gave him an unimpressed look, then smirked. All right, but you're tanking. He was Overlord ranked, impressive for his age, but everything that they wanted to fight was mythic ranked. I'm good, thanks. Really, no need for that. Disregarding the foodie, some of us would like to come along for the fights. It's a good chance to see more of the continent and build our skills with new targets, but without the grind of going to dungeons. One of the others suggested. Guaranteed fights without having to devote themselves to a whole dungeon fight, and while helping someone else recover from the attacks, sounded pretty good to them. Especially to the nobles and merchants who could use a bit of a reputation boost. However, Prince Nathan wasn't so sure that this was a good idea. It had been less than a day since someone sent an exceptionally skilled assassin after him, and he still didn't know who wanted him dead. Could be one of the people talking to them now. On the other hand, if it wasn't one of them, then having a crowd of strangers was actually an advantage. Assassinating a prince in public with other nobles around was much higher risk, and someone with the right skills might be able to trace the source of the attack or capture the assassin. Ray might have failed to capture or kill him last time, but if she had 3 or 4 more mythic dragons helping her, they might succeed. We could make it an expedition? Bring along some support staff and such. Prince Nathan suggested. Carl laughed. Oh, I've got that covered. Trust me, we're not short on support staff. If more people want to come with us and find new things to hunt, that is fine, I won't stop anyone. Mostly I just brought us to town so that they knew that it was safe to start sending people back out to the farms and small towns. The crabs are gone, and things can start going back to normal. If they brought too many people, it would interfere with Ray's hunt for new things to kill. Are you in a hurry to leave? We've heard a lot about the Darklight Host and your crafting skills. You know how it is, we don't often get a chance to cross the continent just to check out new shops. One of the dragons asked. Dana nodded at Carl. That was what most had come here for before the battle. I don't see any harm in it. We've got a whole group of expert crafters with us. We have a stock of weapons, accessories, armor, potions, clothing, and even practical domestic items. Carl agreed. The guards turned to stop the crowd from rushing through them to make requests. Everyone calm down. Guild leader Carl, would you like to set up a shop in the market area? It will prevent some of this chaos. The guard commander shouted. Kara smirked at him and the guard sighed. He knew that he just screwed up, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened once word spread through the city that the Darklight Host was doing a surprise market visit with mythic craftsmen. To the dragons of Gathuzan, that was even more unbelievable than Opal found the thought of someone escaping from Rak. You're really going to sell mythic ranked items? One of the dragons asked, unable to believe his luck. Weapons and armor in limited quantities only. We have an agreement with the immortal regent not to sell so much that we mess up the market or cause him headaches. Carl agreed. The guards laughed. Even 1 or 2 epic-grade mythic rank weapons was enough to cause an uproar within the city. This wasn't Xylaz, where there were hundreds or thousands of mythic guild members gathered for dungeons. They were strong, but there were only a dozen myths in the entire city of 250,000. More of them had come from the royal capital with Carl and his people than actually lived here. However, it didn't appear that the Darklight host minded at all, and Remy was sorting through bags, and many of the potions she took out to check were overlord or totem ranked. So, they weren't just trying to get even more obscenely wealthy. Still, it took a force of 20 city guards, plus the Prince's Palace guard force to get them through the crowd and into the market, which was usually all but deserted as it was the middle of the week. That changed quickly. Everyone who was anyone was headed to the market to try to get at least one of the items they had heard that the Darklight host made, and every woman in town wanted to at least get a look at what the Dragon Isle's hottest new fashion line had to offer the public. Chapter 1442 Shop Set. The Darklight host ended up needing 4 separate stalls for their market stop, and that was just for the very basics, as the majority of the market was occupied, despite being one of the slower days of the week. Is that all one guild? What are they selling? The shop stalls are beautiful. The locals were gushing as they saw the line of mythic residents gathered around the Darklight host shops. Why are all the people in line so powerful, though? One of the other shopkeepers asked. I think it's because the guild can sell mythic items. They're going to clear out the good stuff before we get to the front of the line. One of the other shopkeepers whispered. The 2 men sighed in resignation, accepting that they weren't going to get the good stuff. But Dana was there to console them. We put limits on per-person purchases, so that more than one customer actually gets decent items. As long as they don't buy one of everything, there should still be good stuff available. Plus, they're going to go for the mythic items first. If you're not looking to spend that level of money, I wouldn't worry about it. They'll buy up the most expensive stuff, and leave the rest for whoever wants it. She explained. The shopkeepers looked suspicious, but the stalls were nearly set up now, and they were ready to start the actual shopping. Damn it! This isn't a vendor. This is a national treasury. They heard one of the shadow dragons nearest to the stalls complain. He was standing near Carl's booth, where a number of epic-grade weapons and accessories had been placed out. Friends, you will find that the Darklight host has incredibly reasonable pricing for our items. Quantity is limited for weapons and offensive mythic-grade items. Strictly first come, first served. No reservations, no rain checks. Carl announced. Dana smiled, and the merchant she was speaking with laughed. If I didn't know better, I would think that he was a snake oil hawker. He's got a talent for it, for sure. The questionable sales pitch didn't bother the shoppers. All that mattered was what they had found on the displays, under the barrier that Carl had set. Look at those stats. Perfectly optimized. One of the mages sighed. Don't be shy, they're all for sale. Prices are clearly labeled, and the Darklight host is happy to exchange for materials of all sorts. Carl suggested. The mage sighed deeply and took out a stack of gems and crafting materials until he got to what was an equivalent local retail price. Pleasure doing business. Carl informed him with a smile as he handed over the amulet. Then he replaced it with another, and the mage frowned. What? Not everything fit on the table, and they're basically the same stats. The warrior beside him laughed. He's got you there. You should have gone for a bracelet. You can wear one of those on either arm. Carl shrugged and pointed to one on the table. I have similar ones. I also have ones with crafting skill bonuses that work with inscription. The mage shook his head. I'm not that wealthy. We have lower ranks as well. One of the warriors silently gestured to a sword and handed over a bag full of mythic crafting materials. As Carl was busy teasing the mage, Tessa handed him his weapon, and the warrior immediately put it away before anyone else could see what he had purchased. They weren't going to let him get away so easily. But there were more important matters, as his departure cleared a spot at the front of the line for another dragon to step up. Carl's booth wasn't the only busy one, but the crowd was very different at Ray's stall full of clothing. There was a table of folded clothes, hanging dresses, and no barrier, so that the shoppers could touch, inspect, and examine the items. The logic was simple. While Carl wanted to reduce temptation, Ray knew that you needed to truly examine clothing, and she wouldn't be mad if someone did try to steal from her. It wouldn't end well for them, but she wouldn't be mad. Perhaps this town could use an art installation? Dana shook her head in dismay. How had Ray gone from being excited about selling dresses to wanting to make an art installation out of the town? She strongly suspected that it was just a default state for Ray when she got excited, and she was definitely excited to be spreading around her dresses. She had even gone all out and had included a few lower-grade copies of fancy dresses in the back of the stacks, so that the shoppers could discover an extremely reasonably priced commander rank version of a design they loved. That might not be suitable for a high society ball, where you went to show off your wealth and influence. But for daily wear, it was perfect. Just expensive enough for everyone to know that you weren't broke or unfashionable, but subtle enough that others wouldn't think you were vain. Dana noticed that those dresses were actually selling far faster than the fancy stuff. All the dragon nobles were taking 1 or 2 totem and mythic rank dresses, and then 8 or 10 of the more affordable ones in different and more modest designs, with the expensive ones on top of the stack when they checked out, naturally. Ray restocked the shop with every purchase, and all the dresses were slightly different, so there was no fear of a fashion tragedy where 2 people arrived in identical dresses. Though some were quite similar, so some coordination might be needed if an event had a color code. Remy, on the other hand, was selling very little. Her entire line was just alchemists having knowledge-induced nerdgasms. They were excitedly chatting about the many items she had put out, and that had brought the actual sales to a grinding halt. Only a single line off to the side, where Thor had decided to help out, was selling anything, and that was mostly healing potions, hair growth lotion, and Remy's lower-grade advancement potions. Chapter 1443, Let Them Shop. Carl laughed at Remy's chaotic attempt to get anything done while she was distracted by her fellow alchemists. The people in line for equipment all accepted that this was not something that they could do, so they simply joined the line that led to the section with gear for their class type. Fortunately, there weren't many mythic dragons here, and he wasn't going to be required to sell a huge number of items for them all to be happy. Guild leader Carl, I don't suppose that you would have a full set of equipment for a totem rank druid, would you? My husband just advanced. A mythic red dragon asked politely. Of course. What is his preference? Because if you want leather armor, that's over with Lady Ray. I can get him everything else, though. The dragon smiled and turned to Ray, who was calculating the tab for an elderly shadow dragon woman with a huge pile of children's dresses. Ray nodded. I have good things for dragon druids. In green and brown, the dragon requested. Ray moved a set of armor out of her space onto the counter in front of Carl, and the dragon smiled. Oh, that is lovely, he will love it. There are leather options? I thought it was just a dress shop. One of the rogues realized. We sell nearly anything you could need for combat. If you don't see what you need, just ask. Carl agreed. The shops were getting busy, so he called on the epic guard to assist him. With her branch-like fingers, she didn't have the easiest time working a shop, but she could still do the job well enough. He would have called the epic golems, but that was bound to end badly. The only ones he had that were the right size and shape were all dark elven royalty, and they did not have the personality for customer service. Perhaps he really should go to more dungeons. If he could find more with intelligent and humanoid bosses, he could add them to his list of useful helpers. Not long after, the myths were done with their shopping, and that opened the shops up to the locals, who had been patiently waiting their turn, so as not to offend the more powerful guests. The last thing anyone wanted was to upset someone who could make their life difficult out of spite. The mythic rank dragons understood that as well, and though they didn't go far, they all moved to the far side of the stalls to talk and to watch what came out for the lower-ranked shoppers. Some of the items might be interesting to their younger generation family members, and if they found something fascinating, they could make the trip to Drod to place a custom order. Carl was the Drod branch leader of the Darklight host, so there should be more craftsmen there. Even if they needed him specifically for what they wanted, his branch members would be the ones who organized the schedule. Not that many of them would be asking for mythic rank custom items. No, it would be the items for the rest of their families that they were more interested in, as those were the ones who needed the growth, who needed the gear to face the challenges ahead. For the mythic ranked elders of their families, understanding the fundamental rules of reality was the most important part of their advancement, and most of them knew that they would never make it to immortality. They simply lacked the potential. Not that it mattered. They had thousands of years to live as dragons, and even the other species would live 1,000 years or more at mythic rank. So, claiming a full family of totem and mythic ranked members was much more impressive than an immortal ancestor, who had most likely left the Dragon Isles to pursue a future in the immortal realms. At first, it looked like they would be disappointed, as the items were mostly just weaker versions of what they already had. But after a few minutes, Carl started putting out life skill items, and then the epic guard placed out a whole bucket full of commander-rank domestic chore rings. Those were a massive hit in Drod, and now that they were past the ultra-wealthy members, who were more interested in what they could do to advance their heirs, the Darklight host had switched their focus to items that would help the moderately wealthy families more. If you could afford one made, buying them a ring like this would vastly improve your own quality of life, as they could do so much more with the time that they had. Interesting. So, they make items like that as well. I also see some statues for simple tasks and common buffs. We could make a lot of friends giving those out as gifts. One of the dragons whispered to the woman beside him. She nodded. I will arrange for someone with a strong portal spell to bring us across the continent. There is an event the day after tomorrow, and few will have anything like it by then. Neither had noticed that Lotus was standing beside them. They were looking right over her head. But when the cleric poked them to get their attention, she was smiling up at them. If you go to the Drod Guild house, ask them for healing totem statues. They sell them in every rank up to Overlord, and they make a lovely gift for anyone. She suggested. They were also expensive as they were such a prized item, and could only be made by certain members, which meant more money for the guild house. This trip was a brilliant idea. Not only their core group but everyone else was about to get a whole new customer base. Hopefully they could keep up with demand, given the number of items they sold at the Xylaz Arena. Chapter 1444 Grandfather's Prerogative. Once the crowd had died down, Carl started to make plans for the evening. Prince Nathan had already faced one assassination attempt today, so it would be best to put him in the tiny world for the evening, but some of them would want to stay out and explore the town for the night, and then leave in the morning. Is there a proper inn nearby? I'm thinking that we should stay for the night, and head out to find the next group of monsters in the morning. Carl suggested once the majority of the shoppers in the crowd had dispersed. No need for that. Come stay with my family. My grandson is the mayor, and I'm certain that he will be overjoyed to have the Darklight host and their friends for the evening. One of the shadow dragons insisted. Carl did notice that he didn't mention the prince, but then he also noticed that he could not see the prince. Ray? Is he safe? He made the mistake of mentioning Pick, and Lotus had Thor take him into the tiny world. So that's how she kept getting in and out at will. Because Thor was linked to Carl, he could come and go from the tiny world even when the entry was closed. So he could bring people with him to the space, which meant that it didn't matter if the entry was sealed, as long as the space itself was traveling with Carl and not left behind somewhere across the continent, he could simply enter it at will. Take the royal guards to him so they don't panic. I will bring the rest to the mayor's, and we will party for the evening, then find more monsters tomorrow. Consider it done. Carl patted the elder on the shoulder. I'm sure that he will be overjoyed to have such vivacious guests for the evening. The dragon laughed. Yes, just so. At least your friends show up sober. Not like those brats he met at the academy. They walked as he talked, and Carl wrapped an arm around Dana's shoulder, so she wasn't pulled away by the others. Give us 10 minutes to finish taking down the shops, and we'll be ready to go. They've bought up nearly everything that we brought already. Indeed, the shops were looking pretty sparse, which was normal for a market stall at the end of the day, but they had only been open a few hours, not all day. Your guild did well. Are you able to restock for your next stop? The elder asked. We are. I'm still within range of the Sihosesa branch house, so I can access the guild bank and get goods moved to me for resale. Once we get further down the continent, I will just use a portal. I have some skill with them, and I can move about the Dragon Isles fairly easily. A few of the mages huffed in annoyance at that. Is there some trick to it? One asked. Carl shook his head. Mostly it's just familiarity with the destination and a lot of mana. But I do have a skill that reduces the mana cost increase with distance, so it's not a big deal, even if I'm going from Drod to Xylaz, where we have an alliance house and arena facility. Oh, I heard about that. I'm told that the arena is a masterpiece of magical architecture, and that they've got an illusionary arena area that can take fighters up to Overlord ranked. Carl nodded. It can take totems, but the mana draw on the barriers gets pretty intense if they're going all out. We just make them donate mana in advance to keep the arena storage up. If you happen to be in the area, the shops have mystic cooking skill masters, and the fine dining area serves totem and mythic rank meals, depending on what seasonal ingredients are available. The mage laughed. Lord Guildmaster, I'm afraid that your pockets are much deeper than mine. While we're both mythic rank dragons, I am a civil servant on a civil servant's budget. The dragons around them all laughed. His budget wasn't so small that he couldn't afford it. But he hadn't realized just how reasonable the prices were, despite the Xylaz markup to pay their taxes. Perhaps we could borrow the kitchen? I can summon an assistant that will do the cooking, and make an event of it. Carl offered. You can do what now? Dana giggled as Carl gave the mage a sly smile. It's a secret bonus of being the avatar of the world dragon. I have a skill that can grant skills to my summoned creatures if I prepare in advance. So, I can call for an assistant that can do all the cooking, and it only took a few hours of work to prepare. Ophelia sighed. Carl's version of reality did not quite match the way that she remembered things. He had runecrafting long before he had his last class advancement, and the epic golem skill was not a class skill. But nobody asked annoying questions when you told them that it was a class skill reserved for the avatar of the world dragon. They just assumed that it wasn't something that they could learn, and left it at that. So, party at the mayor's house? One of the warriors asked hopefully. Seems like it. And if you're coming along with us on our hunting expedition, we will depart from there tomorrow morning. Who is volunteering the mayor's house for a party? A deep voice asked as a totem-ranked dragon marched up to them. Oh, there he is. Bobby, meet Carl, branch leader of the Darklight host. He has the most wonderful stuff. the elder dragon announced. Gramps, you can't just tell people that there is a party at my place. It's a government building. Nonsense. Don't forget. I lived there for 200 years. This is a foreign dignitary visit. Of course there will be a party. Carl looked down at the last few items on the table with disappointment. They weren't suitable for a gift for the mayor. But he had more in storage. A small welcoming gift from the Darklight host. He handed the mayor a verite ring with a persuasion bonus on it, an item made by the ladies of the guild as a gag when they were annoyed with the dwarves, not wanting to do anything fun. The mayor stared at it for a few seconds. This is rune crafting? How does a crafted item even get a bonus to persuasion type skills? That's why we make them. I'm glad you like it. Chapter 1445 Forced to Relent. The mayor relented as he slid the ring on his hand. He would have to ask about that later, when there weren't so many ears around. All right. How many of you are there? My group will mostly retreat to a separate space, but a few from the guild will need rooms, and then we've gathered another 20 or so mythic dragons, who intend to stay the night. You have a separate space that can hold people? The elder asked. Carl nodded. Indeed. It makes life much easier, and it's where we grow most of the crops for Remy's alchemy experiments. The old dragon smiled. Oh, I see what you mean now. Tiny world or something similar, yes? I should have known that you would have at least one artifact grade skill. Carl nodded. That is exactly the skill. However, that's not the only artifact grade skill that I have, just the most practical. Artifact grade combat skills feel extremely lacking in comparison. You have artifact grade combat skills? Isn't that just a bit ridiculous? Dana laughed. Oh, it totally is. It turns anyone who uses it into a dungeon boss at their rank. Seriously? Dana nodded. I told you that it was ridiculous. You should see what happens when you use it on a chaos badger. The dragon shuddered at the thought. I'd rather not, thanks. One of the dragons shook his head in dismay. If that was the dungeon boss, who would go back? Not even the system should be that cruel. Though I have heard that there is one that has an ancient fire dragon as the boss, though it's a lower rank dungeon. Dana smiled, and the dragon looked confused. At the same rank, ancient fire dragons were terrifying. There was no way for him to know that Epic Golem could record the boss for later summoning. She could have dragons. Perhaps we can see it later. I've never seen what a dragon in a dungeon is like. Most dungeon monsters are insane thanks to the dungeons themselves, so it could be interesting. Even the dark elves change drastically when they are not in the dungeon. Oh, you've been to Bara? I can't say that the dark elves are significantly more pleasant to deal with outside the dungeon, but they are more sane and reasonable. The dragon insisted. Nerid, on the southwestern island, has a lot of them, doesn't it? Dana asked. Far too many of them. If the rest of the country wasn't filled with spiders and bugs, the dark elves would likely have a worse reputation than they already do. The man next to him laughed. You know how silly it sounds to hear that a 30-meter-long dragon is scared of bugs, right? I'm not scared of them, they're just bugs, he replied with a shudder. Dana patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry. I get your aversion to all things crawling and buzzing. See? Someone understands. If you're planning to head to the mayor's, we should likely go before he locks us all out, and we have to rent a hotel room. The elder suggested, raising his voice and causing the mayor himself to turn to glare at him. You make it sound like I would lock my own family out of the house, he retorted. The old man gave him a raised eyebrow, unimpressed look, and the mayor shrugged. There really was a good chance that he would do it if it was only one troublesome old man. But with Carl and the Darklight host here, he really couldn't. They had brought so many dragons from the capital to help with the leftover monsters, and he owed them at least a small party for that. With the limited numbers that he had, it would have taken ages to sort it all out on his own. With everything packed up, and most of the Darklight host now in the tiny world, leaving only Carl, Dana, and Ray outside to deal with the dragons, it was time to move, much to the relief of the mayor. Do any of you have dietary restrictions? He asked, slipping into professional mode. None known, though I cannot speak for the dragons. Carl agreed. The mayor smiled. Fortunately, I know all of these people. We're not that far from the capital, and I'm not young enough that I don't know the more powerful members of society. Carl nudged Dana as they walked. Hear that, we're powerful members of society now. The dragons burst into laughter at his words. You're the avatar of the world dragon, and a guild leader of the Supreme Lady's Darklight host. Who could possibly claim to be a more powerful member of society outside the royal family, and perhaps immortal Avatar Dakarian? Kara cheered in Carl's mind when she heard that news. The Black Dragon Avatar was still around. Hopefully he remembered her. Is Avatar Dakarian nearby? Carl asked in what he hoped was a casual tone. The mayor shook his head. No, he is somewhere south of here in Zindab. He went to help with the aftermath of the attacks there. Dana smiled as she came to a realization. So, there is an immortal for each of the major islands in time of crisis? Immortal Avatar Dakarian, Immortal Regent Azof, the Supreme Lady Matilda, and the one from Nerid. Yes, the Dark Lady of Nerid is the fourth. However, there are two more that are more reclusive but spend most of their time on this world. Those four are the ones that have each taken responsibility for an island, though they don't always live on the one that they are tasked with. Avatar Dakarian spends a majority of his time in Nerid, working on experiments with the spider goddess priestesses. They are quite attuned to the death god, I am told. One of the quiet immortals was a dwarf Karl knew. Azof had said that he intervened in Zararag and possibly in Bomgan during the attacks. The last might be Misty, or it could be someone entirely different. If it was the temporal dragon, it wouldn't surprise him that everyone thought she was reclusive. Really, she was just busy keeping the timeline in order. Chapter 1446 Strange Guests. When they got to the mayor's house, the garden was set up for a party, and the doors were open to welcome them into the main ballroom directly from the entrance. The dragons were in party mode, and the mood shifted as quickly as the band could start a new song. Then, more nobles from the city began to arrive, having gotten word of the event and hastily prepared to come meet with the nobles from the capital. It was an excellent time to build alliances, and that left Karl and Dana to mostly just mind their business and answer a few questions about the Darklight host and their crafting capabilities. The fact that they had a mythic rank blue dragon among their crafting team surprised very few. The guild was much more famous here than most other places, as Gathuzan was directly across the straits from Saihosesa, and the dragon were long-lived. Most of them had flown over the Supreme Lady's territory on their way to Kapi or Nazalbar, which were both largely dragon-populated nations. Guild leader, did the prince not come with you today? I had heard that he was in town. One of the younger dragons asked, excitement in her eyes that told Dana her interest in his interest was very personal. Unfortunately, he had some business to take care of tonight, so he had to retire early. I'm afraid that our plans to continue to hunt leftover monsters from the invasion has generated extra paperwork for him. Karl explained. The girl nodded dejectedly, then realized that this might still be an opportunity. Will he be returning to join your journey? With the attempt on the prince's life, Karl wasn't sure if he should answer that honestly. But Ray did still owe that assassin for escaping from her. Yes. I believe that he will be staying with us as we cross the country. She was about to speak when Karl crushed her dreams. However, the group is all mythic rank combatants with a few totem rank assistants. With everyone flying in to attack, we're not bringing any support staff. Well, none below totem rank, as we have some senior cooking staff with us. Totem-ranked cooks were a relatively normal thing among the dragons. They might be from a lesser dragon species, or they might just be obsessed with their craft. So, they would grow old and powerful but keep a humble profession. Dragons slowly flooded into the gardens of the mayor's house, and staff came around to serve a standing meal, which Karl found curious. He had thought it would be snacks, like most parties, but they brought out small entrees, bowls of soup, and other hearty options along with the sweets, pastries, and savory snacks. It was a curious thing, but far less stressful for the staff than trying to make a full sit-down meal for so many distinguished guests on short notice. Other than the unfortunate soul that had to plate so many dishes. Karl idly scanned the crowd as he chatted, and noticed a few who seemed out of place. They were dressed as well as any of the other nobles, but nobody was really speaking to them, even when they were standing in a group, and their attention was on the palace guard members more than the nobles. It was as if they were visitors from the capital and didn't know anyone here, but they weren't mythic ranked, so they hadn't been at the battle with Karl's group. However, they weren't being kicked out or snubbed, so they should be somewhat important, just not from Gathunbu. Karl wasn't the only one that noticed their presence. But the palace guards weren't going to take action when they knew that the prince was already somewhere safe. Instead, they acted as if they were sent to keep an eye on Karl, which would be a perfectly normal thing to do if he was a guest of the crown. They're definitely sending system messages to someone. They keep blanking out. Ray noted eagerly a few minutes after Karl had noticed the oddity. They could be informants from the family of some of the elder dragons. I suppose that's normal enough given the items we sold today. But I'm thinking what you're thinking. That they are here to verify the condition of the prince. Ray agreed. And now that he was missing, safely tucked away in the tiny world, nobody could confirm whether he was injured in the attack or not. In hushed corners of the party, the same questions were being asked. How did the prince look this afternoon while everyone was shopping? Did anyone see where he went? Who was with him the last time you saw him? What did he buy from the Darklight host? Individually, every one of those questions was perfectly reasonable, and followed a lot of the conversations. After all, everyone had new items to show off, and they were happy to talk about them. It was who was asking and the fact that they were so repeatedly focused on the prince, but never twice in the same person's immediate vicinity, That caught Carl and the palace guard's attention. Whoever had sent them had picked poor associates. Either that, or they were all sent by different people and only the abundance of them made it so suspicious. Carl stopped a server and collected small bowls of soup for everyone around him, then led them to seats near a hedgerow. I must say, the dragons really know how to socialize. This liquor is pretty good. But the idea about being able to just grab your favorite dish multiple times makes dinner much more fun. He joked. Don't let Lotus know, or she will find a way to have nothing but cake for dinner. Dana agreed. You know, there are forms of low-sugar savory baked goods available as well. We keep them for the younger dragons, mostly. You know how it is. They just got out of school. And they're on their own for the first time. So they haven't realized that nobody is looking out for their health yet. One of the older shadow dragons joked. The great horizontal growth spurt of their first appointment. Chapter 1447. Well-timed. As if planned in advance, the party ended 3 hours after sunset, and the guests began heading home. It gave the mayor plenty of time to get his overnight guests settled, and it gave everyone else time to get home and get to work on time in the morning. Guild leader Carl, the mayor called as they stepped inside. Is there a particular reason that your group chose to come here now? No offense, but you're a long way from home, and this is not one of the weaker countries that might have issues with the leftover monsters. Carl nodded. Indeed. It is not random luck that brought us here. You see, we are actually scouting out new locations for guild houses. We currently have 3 locations, all in the Eastern Isles, and we were hoping to spread the influence of the Darklight host a bit further. Some of our members will be moving to Saihosesa to fill in while the Supreme Lady is busy, but our crafting halls are crowded, our membership roster is getting full, and it is inconvenient for customers on the other islands to purchase what they need. We have employed skilled professionals in nearly every major trade, you see. We've even hired spiders who specialize in silk production to create retail-grade products, while Lady Ray focuses on the higher-end custom pieces. They had also needed them just to keep up with the volume, and the spiders were happy to have a safe place to spin the cloth, while the spider beastkin enjoyed working with the fine-quality materials. Ah, so it's a matter of guild logistics. Do you know what is going to happen in Saihosesa? I heard that the Supreme Lady has advanced, and that she will be spending less time there. His question sounded suspiciously ambitious to Carl, but he couldn't see how it would help a young dragon. Perhaps he was asking for an elder. I believe that she intended to have one of her immortal friends come back and watch things in her absence so that there wasn't a power vacuum with her gone. Carl offered. He had no idea what she planned, but her branch was very small. He should talk to her about that. The dragons all stopped to stare at him. Call on an immortal friend? Is she still in contact with immortals who have left the world? Carl nodded. Indeed. I know that she keeps in regular contact with at least a few. But that's largely for practical reasons, as at her power level, she can only interact with the mortal world so much before she starts to destabilize it. The older dragons nodded. They knew how things were, and that the power of a supreme ranked being was never meant to be more than an anchor for the world. She was already at the level where she could reshape the world to her will if she wanted. If that is the case, then I can see why you would want to add an outpost here on the Western Islands. Did you have somewhere in mind? The mayor asked. I was thinking of looking somewhere in Zararag. The dwarves are particularly well suited to runecrafting, and that is the core skill of equipment making. Carl replied with a shrug. The mayor sighed. The dwarves get all the good things. Dana smiled at him. Not all the good things. You should see how many skill books we have given the blue dragons since the Darklight host opened the Drod branch. We have had exceptional luck with inscriptionists learning new skills. The mayor chuckled. Ah, there is that. The blue dragons have been talking about your guild for most of the last year. They're all excited to get to add the new books to their library. I heard something about decentralized knowledge so that a tragedy doesn't wipe out as much history as it did during the last downturn. I don't know if that will actually work, but it is all they can think about. Carl shrugged. Even if they spread out the knowledge, it doesn't matter for skill books. The common skills don't have powerful enough magic in the books to survive the downturn intact. Eventually, they fade. And once they do, the skill is lost in any meaningful way until someone with the inscription skill and an active system appears again. But the system goes nearly completely offline in between resurgences. I don't think it was originally supposed to be that way, but that's how it has been the last 2 resurgences. You say that like you know firsthand. More of an academic form of knowledge. I'm not nearly old enough to have been around for both of the downturns. Carl countered. The dragons accepted that. If he was friends with the Supreme Lady, he could be privy to all sorts of knowledge that others would not even think to ask. The staff will see everyone to their rooms and rouse you for breakfast in the morning, so you can get a good start on your hunting mission. The mayor announced, ready to retire for the evening. He had a long day ahead of him tomorrow, and he hadn't been prepared for his grandfather to volunteer his house for a party, especially when the old man didn't even live in the city. Still, it was a blessing to have the last of the monsters dealt with, so his citizens could return to their homes. Sir, would you prefer a private room? Or is one of the ladies with you? The maid asked politely as the mayor left. The Dana mage is my wife. We will share a room, but I believe all the others present are going to require individual rooms. The members of his team who might share were already in the tiny world. Ray smiled at the maid. If you have a room with a nice balcony and large windows, I am a nocturnal sort. The maid nodded. Of course, miss. I will arrange a corner room for you. Now I can watch for intruders. Someone is bound to come check on the prince tonight. Chapter 1448. They're watching. While Carl and Dana settled in for some hard-earned alone time, Ray prepared for the arrival of their unwanted guests. She could already sense the silly children who thought that they were sneaky while they watched the mayor's house. They hadn't even hidden their murderous intent properly. She could sense it even with their auras hidden. Ray stalked out of the house to go inspect one who was showing signs of moving. This seemed like the perfect moment to vent some frustrations about having been left out of whatever fun things Kara and Carl got to do. They had definitely gotten to kill new things, and she was not invited. No matter what Misty said, that was just unfair treatment. The barrier around the building didn't even try to stop her incorporeal form when she crept through an open window, and Ray smiled to herself. They needed to work on their security. She didn't linger on the thought for long, though. Her target was moving. Why was he headed for the servant quarters with that murderous intent? Did he have an accomplice? Ray used unobtrusive behemoth to shrink her spider form to the size of a small dog, and used her web to silently prepare a trap along the roof, so she could trap her target and question him. Then the man turned, and she saw him picking the lock on a door at the end of the hall. There was a totem-ranked barrier and alarm system on the room, and Rack sighed dejectedly. She had misjudged. His murderous intent and his attention to the mayor's house were unrelated. He wanted to kill the woman in this room, and he had been watching the party with envy. Well, he could let this play out while she extended her sense to the other potential targets. The man managed to get the door unlocked, and then used a magical item to disable the alarm for a few seconds while he entered. So, she followed him in. There were 3 people inside, 1 fat old man, and 2 dragonkin girls with collars around their necks. Well, this was interesting. The barrier had completely altered their soul appearance from the outside. She should ask someone how to do that. The assassin crept up to the bed, and slammed his dagger down into the fat man's chest. Blinding blue light flared, and the man leapt to his feet, enraged and instantly aware of the threat. Did you think that I would let you actually kill me? He roared, and the air crackled with power as he prepared to unleash dragon breath in the enclosed space. Ray snagged the 2 dragonkin girls and moved back outside the doorway to watch the entertainment as the 2 faced off. The rogue didn't speak, only launched a flurry of skills at the fat dragon, who unleashed his breath weapon in the room, and equipped a staff to defend himself. The wall exploded outward as the dragon unleashed an area skill, hurling the rogue through the window and out into the courtyard. Night Haunter saved the 2 dragonkin girls from injury, as the man whose bed they had been sharing had apparently forgotten about them. He simply turned to the destroyed window and continued raining spells on the attacker. The attacker fled, and the fat dragon surveyed the ruins of his domain. Damn it, I just bought those whores. Not even a bit left to resurrect them from. Such a waste of money. He complained. Ray snorted in amusement. His senses were so dull that he didn't even realize they were still standing 5 meters away. But the 2 girls looked absolutely terrified as they stared up at Ray, who appeared to be a black misty ghost. While they were all embraced in her Night Haunter skill, alarms started to go off now, and Ray felt the attention of the others she had tagged turning toward this spot instead of the mayor's house. If they thought that the prince had been hiding here, and that they were too late, that would be perfect. She could wait for them to show up and investigate. Their motives when they thought nobody was watching. Guards began to pour into the ruins of the inn, which had been mostly unoccupied before the attack. But the attention of the girls was on Ray. Are you the Reaper? Come to take us away now that we are dead. One of them whispered. Don't be silly. You're not dead. I just borrowed you for a little while so we could watch the show. Ray replied. Then, we have to go back to him after this? The other realized, her voice cracking at the end. Who said anything about that? He thinks you're dead. That means you're mine, and I don't return gifts. The girls stared at what they thought was a harbinger of death sent by the spider goddess. How had they gone from bed slaves to a gift to the god of death? Were they actually dead? Or undead? But Ray was not concerned with their existential crisis. A large group of dragons had arrived, and the fat man was issuing orders to find the assassin. That made it the perfect opportunity to troll someone. He wasn't working alone. She whispered in the fat dragon's ear. Mommy! Who's there? Die! He screamed, and began lashing out with attacks. Ray giggled, letting him hear it. while the two girls panicked as spell effects crashed into the barrier around them. All right, we need to go before someone actually sees through my defensive spells. Ray informed them. How are we still alive? The girls whispered in unison. He's not even a myth. How would you be dead so fast? He's pretty mad, though. And there were mythic guards coming, who would find Ray within seconds. Off to the tiny world it was. She could drop off her new acquisitions with the druids, and then she would return to hunting the ones who had been watching the mayor's house. Chapter 1449 People or Product. The two dragonkin stared at the interior of a large stone room, covered in silk drapes and pillows, with no actual furniture. Welcome to the tiny world. This is my relaxation room. We really only use it when we are having a snack party or a fitting for a new clothing line. It's the easiest spot for me to bring you, but now we can go meet the others. Do you have skills or preferred daily activities? I forgot to ask before I collected you. The two girls stared at the spider, still not completely sure that they weren't dead. Daily activities? We're just awakened rank slaves. Did you need us to cook, clean, attend to your people in the evening? One of them asked with a bit of a shudder at the end. Ray laughed at her disgust. I'm sure some of the ladies are single and like that, but no. I needed you for... Well, I didn't really have a reason. I was planning to kill that intruder and go hunt something else, but I got distracted watching the show. So, now you're here and we can find you somewhere to stay. It'll be fine, the nature clerics take care of people. I've called one over, and they will help you find a room somewhere. But now I have to run. Good luck. The two clerics frowned as the spider vanished. They were left alone in a room full of silk pillows that could each be traded for everything that they had ever owned, with a vague promise that someone would come find them to get them. A room. But only a few seconds later, an elf and a small green dragon rushed into the strange waiting area through a hidden door. Are you the new friends that Ray promised us? It's late, but we can sleep in here. Did you need food? My name is Button, and we have big plans for tomorrow. Tomorrow is breakfast burrito day, so we need to be extra clean. And that means bubble bath. What she got in return was a slow blink. What? I love bubble baths. Do you not like them? Mississippi. The dragonkin began gently. I have never had a bubble bath before. We were sold to a local noble by the orphanage as soon as we were old enough to work. Button looked horrified. And he didn't let you have a bubble bath? Never ever? What sort of monster is he? Are you sure that the Lady Ray intended to leave us with you? The other dragonkin asked politely. Of course she did. I'm the only one awake. She would have asked Lotus or perhaps one of the older ladies, but it's after bedtime. They can sort it all out after breakfast tomorrow. Do you prefer fluffy blankets? Knitted blankets? Or a cuddle pile? Lyric was doing her best not to laugh as Button tried to settle two confused young women into the room for the night. The dragon had no concept of what life was like for what the elf assumed were indentured servants, so she couldn't relate to their concerns. I don't know how you caught Lady Ray's attention, but you'll be safe now that you're here. We all work for our keep, but things are probably better than you are expecting. But tell me, how did you get her attention? Showing up with people during her night hunting hours is pretty rare. She said something about coming to kill the man who was breaking into our owner's room, but getting distracted because we were there. One of them offered. Oh, that sounds fun. Did she get him? The dragonkin shook her head. No. The attacker lost the fight and he was driven away. That was when the one you call Lady Ray decided to bring us here and return to her hunt. Lyric nodded. Someone stronger must have been coming, and she didn't want to explain what she was doing in their house. While Button and Lyric chatted with her new acquisitions, Ray stalked the failed assassin through town. Guards were chasing him, as were a half-dozen of the other potential targets she had identified, which gave her a perfect opportunity to see who was working together. The others were approaching quickly, but three of them seemed to know exactly where the assassin was going. They were headed directly for the warehouse where he had hidden. Why was it always a warehouse? She would have to ask Carl about that. Did you get him? Was the information on the mayor's development plan with him? One of the men asked as he burst into the warehouse. The assassin panted and shook his head. I failed. He had been warned, and he was awake when I arrived. He detonated half the inn to get rid of me. What about his pleasure slaves? They might know. They were in the room when everything exploded. They're likely missed now. You know he wouldn't waste the energy to save them. Ray smiled. Nobody would miss her new mannequins. Two more men rushed in, and one of them whispered a warning. The mayor's men are almost here. We need to make ourselves scarce. That left Ray with a dilemma. It sounded like nobody was looking for the prince. They were all after the mayor's people for some political nonsense. But the mayor's grandfather was going to be adventuring with them, so didn't that make him Carl adjacent? An accessory member of their extended team? She could leave them a little bit alive so the officials could question them. Yes, that would be the best way. She just needed to open the battle with a team of spectral knights and nobody, would escape. The undead horde appeared in the room, and the conspirators panicked. Fight your way free. Send the message. Complete the mission. When did he get a mythic necromancer? Ray smiled as panic and terror overtook the group, then dropped into their midst and began methodically severing tendons so they couldn't escape, even if they opened a portal. Chapter 1450. Enough to interrogate. When the mayor's security team arrived, for critically wounded totem rank men had been partially disemboweled and crucified in the warehouse, with no sign of what had attacked them. Sir, they're still alive. This one is conscious. One of the guards announced. First, find what attacked them. I don't want to be ambushed when we're questioning them if it's a wandering monster that has taken up residence in the warehouse. Undead. Monster. Death goddess. Please, we're sorry. We never meant to. The lone conscious conspirator mumbled. The mayor's guards took a defensive formation, guarding themselves and the prisoners against what they assumed was an undead monster. Ray giggled as she realized that none of them had found her yet. But then a sense of danger flashed into her mind an instant before she shifted with shadow step. The assassin was on her instantly, and she speared an attack into his chest hard enough that it sent him flying across the room, despite the fact that he parried the blow. Shit, they're still here. Grab the prisoners and go before whoever stopped the attack gives up on defending us. The leader of the security team demanded. The assassin didn't care about them or their petty nonsense. This Lady Ray bloodbath had nearly killed his sect member, and that could not be allowed to stand. Behind him, the spider appeared again, and he lashed out with crippling strike, then canceled the skill and fled with shadow step, as he felt blood destruction threatened to boil him from the inside out. Come out, wherever you are. Ray sang as she chased him through the city, always a half step behind him. So close that he couldn't even use a healing potion, only parry her attacks while he used every movement skill he had to escape. There was a spot ahead, one he was sure would be perfect for the job. A swamp with a special mist that dispelled all spectral and illusionary skills. That would make it easier to see the spider so he could fight her with all his senses. He landed in the water, every sense on high alert, only to find there was no sign of the spider. Then, a small black and white furry creature meandered through the water, casually strolling his way. It was clearly mythic rank, but his brain couldn't understand why it was here. Kara transformed into her teen girl persona and gave him a crooked smile. Her scarred face made it look sinister and happy at the same time, like he had wandered into the den of a predator who was more curious than anything. Your timing is impeccable. Sister Ray told me that you would come here, so I've set up a playground for you, she explained. Nope, fuck that. The assassin thought, then fled. Only he couldn't. Chaotic Zone had locked down his ability to use movement skills, and he had landed in a trial instance, inadvertently trapping himself in what he thought was the safe mist of the swamp. Ray walked over in humanoid form, a pleased smile on her face. You're pretty good. Not as good as your friend, but I am intensely interested in what he did that actually harmed me to that degree, she explained. The assassin didn't respond, silently planning his escape. The spider had an assistant, another magical beast that he had never seen before. He assumed that Kara's chaotic zone was a spatial ability, locking down his ability to teleport. So all he could do was disable the scarred girl and then try to cripple the spider woman. I know what you're thinking, but you can't harm me. You can try, but you can't do it. Sister Ray wants to play with you, so you're going to play. Ray nodded and gestured to his dagger. If you need time to poison your weapons or something, go ahead. I want to know everything. She was so incredibly close to finishing her understanding. She couldn't pass up the chance when she had run into a fellow expert. An unknown skill made the man's dagger glow green as he launched an attack, using shadow step at much closer range. This time it didn't try to take him out of the swamp, and his attack lashed out at Ray's back as he reappeared, only to find that she was no longer there. Pain scared through his skull as he was grabbed by the hair and tossed into the air. Ray examined the dagger she had obtained. Nothing special. It would not harm her in the same way as the other one. Had the other assassin used a special weapon and not a skill? That was disappointing. She hurled the dagger back at its owner, who twisted in midair to catch it and land in a defensive posture. What are you? Ray shrugged. I am Ray. Bring your friend here. I need to talk to him a little bit. You don't know what I need to know. The assassin frowned. The white dragons were still trying to cure his wounds. He couldn't even leave bed yet, and he was hovering on the precipice between life and death. He can't come, but I will avenge him. That's sad. I thought that he might be a worthy opponent, but it looks like he just couldn't understand the final step. Ray sighed. She transformed as the assassin launched his attack, and sparks flew as daggers met armored forelimbs. Kara popped caramel peanut popcorn into her mouth by the handful as she watched the deadly dance between the two elite killers unfold in front of her. To most, it would look like nothing but a blur, and to even more, it would just be unbridled violence. But every move was carefully measured, intended to inflict maximum damage. Every bit of energy was directed into their attacks, with nothing wasted. However, the match was not equal. Ray was still holding back, trying to understand what she was missing. Her opponent was failing, her moves were flawless. But hollow. One more insight. That was all she needed. One insight and she would be perfect. Chapter 1451 Desperate Hope. The assassin collapsed, exhausted. He had given everything to his sect. His loyalty, his pride, and now even his life. But it was never enough. He was always second best. Even as close as he was to immortal rank, he still couldn't overcome the gap and become the sect's favorite. All their trust, their best assignments, their finest items, they all went to his senior brother. And they were brothers, they had been together for life, and even now he didn't regret a single moment. Given the chance, he would do it again. His breath rattled as he took his final breath, just in time for a second assassin in black to appear between him and Rack. The man was obviously limping, and holding a short sword defensively as he kneeled next to the crippled combatant. "Stay with me, I will get you out of here. You can't die, you hear me?" he pleaded. Ray knew this one, he was the first assassin who had clashed with her. But he was weakened, crippled by her attacks in a way that he would never truly recover from. She had shattered his soul, his body, and his mind. No level of healing would ever put him back together the same as he was before. His thoughts, his emotions spilled over, projected by the mind-lock skill used on a broken mind. Everything that he thought, everything he felt, it was all pouring into Ray's mind in real time. And that was the final revelation that she needed. That was the missing part of her understanding of the fundamental rule of pain. The true agony of losing what you loved. He knew that he was a useless man now. His spot in life was lost, and at best he could teach children in the future. But it didn't matter. Watching his only friend die for him was more than he could take. Satisfied that she had what she came for, Ray tossed them a pair of mythic rank healing potions of Remy's creation. "Thank you for your assistance. Good night." Kara smiled as she opened a portal and took them both away, leaving the assassins to recover in the chaotic zone for the next half hour until it collapsed. Once they were gone, the crippled assassin fed his rapidly fading friend the potion, and watched in wonder as his shattered and dissipated soul began to reform in his body, seconds away from being a resurrection and not a healing spell. The failed attacker gasped as terror and agony seared his veins. There was no doubt in his mind that he had just been used as bait so that the spider could learn something, but what it was that she was learning was beyond his comprehension. What he did know was that someone needed to know that the spider goddess was about to gain another immortal follower. He didn't care if it would hurt his pride, if he had to admit in public that he had failed his mission. What mattered was that such a horror couldn't be allowed to roam the world in silence and anonymity. Others had to be prepared. "Drink the potion she left for you. If she wanted us dead, she would have killed us before she left. You know what this means, right?" The recovering assassin asked, his voice hollow. "I know. The Grandmaster has to be told. I don't know what is going to happen after, but I'm afraid that it won't be anything good." Their existential crisis didn't concern Ray. She was already in her space, napping, while Kara took over the night watch to ensure that nobody tried to attack the group. The attention on the mayor's house hadn't been for them, but for local politics. Fortunately, they had found people looking for the prince earlier, and that meant there could very well be an attack once they started to travel in the morning. Wouldn't that be nice? Yes. Ray was looking forward to that opportunity, even in her dreams. Not long after the chaotic zone faded, the two assassins silently returned to their sect, a small compound outside Namans in far southern Gathuzan. "Sect Master, we have dire news to share," the first assassin that had clashed with Ray whispered. "Tell me everything." They relayed everything as they remembered it, adding to the descriptions the other gave in a practice process of complete disclosure. "A blood destruction demonic spider with an epic grade constitution, you say? There is no doubt that she is indeed favored by the spider goddess. That species does not exist in nature. They can only evolve from the most promising arachnid monsters. But to have an epic constitution and a nearly complete understanding of a fundamental rule, that's abnormal. Too close to immortality. However, I do not think that she intends to be an enemy. She's on a mission to finish her understanding of a fundamental rule. You just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. We sent out people to check on the prince, and they discovered that it really was coincidence that she was with him. He had come to try to curry favor with the members of the Dark Light host. The two assassins buried their resentment before their sect master. That was information that they should have had before they were dispatched. The information that they were given was that there were no exceptional combatants with him, and that his royal guard was properly distracted. The second part was true, but the first was most certainly not. The sect master gave them a sympathetic look. The informant who failed to mention that he was with the Darklight host and not simply out with the wastrels of the capital has been punished. Retire to your rooms and heal. You have the time that you need. Once he was alone again, the sect leader sent out a system message to the most terrifying person on his contact list. Immortal lady, we have confirmation. The blood destruction spider has completed her understanding of a fundamental rule. However, there is a new development. She was confirmed to have an epic grade constitution during the last battle. Understood. Your payment is being sent. Chapter 1452, A Source of Leather. Carl could feel the change in Ray when he woke up the next morning. Her space felt different, more complete than it had before, even if the power level didn't actually change. Something must have happened last night because Kara was feeling especially smug, though he couldn't hear anyone talking about an attack. That didn't necessarily mean that there wasn't one, just that it didn't turn into a large enough incident that the mayor's household staff were gossiping about it as they prepared breakfast. Instead, they were fully focused on the marital status of the many mythic dragons present in the house today, and the fact that Carl had brought a divine fox with him. There was a lot of debate about whether he was showing off his trophy wife, or if Dana was an actual combatant, even though she was clearly also at the mythic rank and was using an epic grade transformation spell. Dana tried not to laugh, and silently celebrated the fact that this form didn't automatically activate Fox Charm. That spell was a menace, no matter how much Tion enjoyed leveraging his adorable nature. Everyone was up surprisingly early, and Ray came out of her space to join everyone for breakfast. She had gotten her full 3 hours and then some, and she wanted to see if a more complete understanding helped her see the world a little differently. It didn't seem to have made much difference. Unfortunate, but the breakfast spread was more than worth getting out of bed. Even Kara had transformed to sit at the table for the meal. Correction. She had transformed so that she could teach the mayor's preteen daughter about the joys of hot sauce. Her mother was a fire dragon, and in the badger's experience, spicy things did not bother fire element creatures. So, she should properly appreciate some of the badger's more extreme favorite flavors. Ones that would make a normal person think their face was burning. Is there a specific target for today's outing? One of the dragons asked, subtly checking the area for the prince. I think it's more crabs, but they didn't specify on the sheet for some reason. Carl explained. That one was crabs and squid, but it happened offshore, so it's a bit of a different situation. There are excess monsters there, but they've spread out through the ocean, and now it's nearly impossible to track them. However, they're not a concentrated threat, they're just making fishing an extreme sport in the region. The mayor explained, then pointedly looked at the guests. Is Prince Nathan not awake yet? Carl checked the tiny world, and found that he was currently having his hair braided by Lotus, while Raced, the silver dragon who had come to teach the hatchlings once they were out of their shells, offered advice. He should be out in a few minutes. He's just finishing his morning routine. Whether anyone could take him seriously with beads in his hair was an entirely different matter. Lotus and Ophelia escorted the prince down the stairs a few minutes later, and the other dragons bowed politely as he entered. Highness, you look elegant. Was there an event this morning? One of the dragons asked, confused by the fact that the man had changed his appearance so drastically. No, I was just spending time with the nature clerics and some of the children. They are enthusiastic about fashion. The prince replied dismissively. The dragon smiled politely as he took a seat with Lotus next to him, detailing her plan to renovate one of the ledges along the southern face of the mountain in the tiny world, so that she could hold proper tea parties without sacrificing the best nap spots. The conversation had everyone intrigued because they had no idea where this perfect nap spot on black stone, which held the heat of the sun best, was located. They had obviously both been there recently, but it didn't match any of the local geography. Prince Nathan looked up as he finished his meal and addressed the room. There was an attack at Byrad, right on the border of Karb. It's crocolisks, and they've become a real menace to the locals. I know it would be bypassing some closer targets, but it is fairly high priority. He suggested. Does anyone have an objection? Mythic crocolisks seem like a pretty good fight to me. Ray could use the hides for making leather armor and clothing, Carl agreed. Prince Nathan frowned. Well, I suppose for a spider that would be normal. Ray took a second to realize what he meant. Right, dragons wearing leather armor with scales on it might be a fashion faux pas. I can see how people might take that the wrong way. It's quite popular among the demons, though. Prince Nathan chuckled. The dwarves as well. Crocolisk hide is highly durable, even among beasts of the same rank. They're not normally as strong as these are, so the materials might have some different qualities, but if you're making armor or fashion from it, then going for the demon and dwarf markets would be the best place to start. So, it's settled then. We will fly down and go hunt crocolisks today. If any of you want to return home, I will bid you farewell now, and thank you for your assistance. Everyone else, please be ready in 15 minutes. We can transform in the street out front and fly to our destination, unless someone has a portal available. I've never been there, so I can't do it. One of the older dragons raised his hand. I can save us the time. If we arrive in the city's outskirts, the guards should be able to pinpoint the best spots to go. Hunting as well. Byrad is 60,000 people, give or take, so it's unlikely that they will have been overrun by the beasts, even if they are feeling particularly aggressive. But the city does sit between two major rivers in a marshy area, so it's nearly perfect terrain for them. Chapter 1453 Organized Crocs. The portal brought them to the outskirts of Byrad, where a small army of town guards, volunteers from the local guilds, and nobles from the dragon families had gathered, looking exhausted. Carl transformed into cat demon form and waved to the defenders. Good morning, gentlemen. The Darklight host has sent friends to help sort out the Crocolisk issue, and we've brought reinforcements from the capital. He greeted them cheerfully. Can I stab him? Just a little bit? One of the rogues, a mythic shadow dragon, muttered. Dana laughed as she straightened his clothes. Carl has that effect on people, but he means well. Tell me, where do you need reinforcements? We will purge the Crocolisks from the region before we move on. The rogue sighed. Do you know how hard we've had it here? 10,000 of those damned monsters loose in the wilderness, and we've got what? 100 myths? Every time the sun goes down, they swarm the city walls, and if too many of us leave during the day, they do it twice a day. Dana frowned. That sounds like they still have a leader. Crocolisks on their own would rather bury themselves in the mud during the day and just hunt when they got hungry. They're not a high-energy type of monster. Tell that to them. There isn't anything living within 100 kilometers of here that isn't a crocolisk, or inedible to a crocolisk. We can't even go fishing. For one, there's nothing left to catch, and stepping out alone only attracts more of them. Carl smiled, and Dana smacked him on the back of the head. Baiting the crocolisks is not appropriate behavior. The locals waited for her to explain, as the comment made no sense to them, but Dana just glared at Carl and nudged him to speak for himself. What I was thinking was that we could bring along a few of the local defenders to help us find the crocolisks. Perhaps someone around Overlord rank. Carl began. And hide your auras so that the monsters think that there is a free snack in the area and rush out to eat the bait person? Evil doesn't even begin to cover that tactic. Carl raised his hands in surrender. I didn't mean that we would actually let anything eat them. We have more than enough skill to avoid that. But having someone who was much lower rank would help lure the monsters out. It's not like I could wander around with my aura unleashed and still have anything to fight. Surely it's not that bad? They group up and attack when any of us go out alone. One of the exhausted guards scoffed. Ray gave Carl a mental nudge, as she had spotted a crocolisk watching them from the swamp, only a kilometer away. Carl stopped restraining his aura, and turned to glare at the reptilian beast, which promptly turned tail and ran away. Before it could cause injuries within the city, Carl pulled his aura back and shrugged. See, it's a class thing. My angry aura scares all the monsters away. That aura. What did you do to get a killing aura like that? The guardsman muttered. Are you sure that you want the answer? Good point. I probably don't want to know the answer to that. But if you're willing to help with the invasive species issues, we're glad to have you here. We've got incident maps of all the places we found them hiding, but the crocolisks are an earth and water element creature, so in the swamps they can be nearly impossible to find. They sneak up on us underground, and by the time that we've scrambled defenders, they're already right up against the city walls. That was definitely not normal behavior for the species. Territorial aggression, sure. But going out of their way to find and attack a city? Definitely not. Soul energy in the swamp caught Carl's attention, and it was growing quickly as more attackers came together. Well, it looks like we don't need to go looking for them. They've come looking for us. I think that it's safe to say that they've got an intelligent leader, if they're attacking so soon after sensing my aura. Many species would take it as a threat. Carl explained. What direction? Prince Nathan asked. He considered himself to have pretty keen senses, but he didn't detect anything at all. Over there. Not much further out than the one that I scared away. It must have been the scout for the group. Now we've got a full-fledged attack coming, and just enough time to make a wager. The prince replied with a curious look. It's Lady Ray's favorite game. We call it, Who is the Better Killer? The rules are quite simple. You get 1 point for a kill below your rank, 2 for a kill at your own level, and 10 for an above-rank kill. Carl explained. The prince laughed. You say that like it's so easy to take out an immortal rank threat, even if it is a non-sentient beast. Dana laughed, a musical sound that set everyone at ease. He managed to get an immortal rank octopus monster kill during the first wave of attacks. A sentient beast. But we don't compare normal people to the Carl. The absolute power of his class is completely unfair. In fact, it's so unfair that we count some of his skills separately. Ray smirked at that description. Did she count as one of Carl's skills? In a way, she did. Her bond to him was the reason that she was here, so you could call her power part of Carl's power, through the beast space skill. Can we start killing them yet? She asked, impatient to get started. I will call for the others, and then we can get started. We can't have a proper battle until we have the healing tree in place. Lotus laughed from the middle of the crowd. Bring me my trusty steed, good sir. There is fuckery to spread. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.